Alright, and welcome to the Chrono Clash event. Between this time on battle-based beta, we have a new face amongst other players. The first thing is we have, let's see, it's Bashley, right? Yes, it is Bashley playing the light blue Empire, and we have green Soviet Yousif. And so funny thing is that Yousif has his clan tag. It's animal without the Latin vowel. But anyway, it's good to see that we have so many new faces in this tournament, especially hype was real, and we got, if I remember correctly, 14 players registered for this event. Well, 14 can be a little bit disappointing amount, but for the regular 3, especially on this state, it's actually nice. And we get to see some new faces. I don't know how experienced are they, or if they are old veterans, or at least have some experience about the game. But regardless, it's still good to see that we have gathered a crowd in this game. And the other thing is, I really wanted to use the banner. I think it's a quite funny and wonky enough. Can put us some laughs, but I think I couldn't make it work properly. So instead of not risking it and finding myself speaking to an empty screen for nothing, so I decided to not use it until I learned how to use it properly. So in the meantime, Yousif is going for 2 reactors. So we can see some expansion from perhaps C or over the top. On the meantime, Bashley just secures these bunkers here. Usually these bunkers work really well for the Soviets because after all, if Empire gets it here, and on the early game, Soviets usually rely on land units a lot, so they will be barred access from the rest of the map over here. I mean, at least your opponent will have sight. Meanwhile, you just having a maintaining foothold here with the Soviets will not really, I have to say, bother Empire a lot, because after all, they will use some mecha Tengus. They can simply fly over here or just ignore here and skewer over all over the place, just here to harass your collectors. The good thing is the area between the two Ornos are quite relatively small, so one Tesla coil or even a sentry gun can actually effectively protect your collectors a while. So here Imperial Warriors are actually shredding. These are flag troopers, by the way. So 1200 credits go for nothing, and we see the sickle, but there's no anti-air, so Bashley can actually quickly dispatch the sickle with the help of burst drone. Also, this seems like a wrong rally point. I mean, the sickle is doing absolutely nothing right now, and Bashley is actually going with greedy, already having 4 refineries, and now going for the 5th. So I think Yousif doesn't really have what it takes a lot. This conscript died for nothing, by the way. There are some 3 sickles here, but still, they can't do much, a lot in this game. I mean, they have to travel all the way here to do at least something. The solace here would be these garrisons not having any kind of tank buses, otherwise these sickles would be already going half HP down. But this sickle is actually harassing this collector a bit sleepy or the lazy of the Bashley, let's say, to not wall collector by any means. So one collector is down, but how much would that matter? Also, we have sickle. Sickles are being dealt with very swiftly, as we have now Striker VX taking 3 shots all over his poor sickles trying to do something. Already two VXs arrived. No terror drone surprise as well. Even so, if there's a terror drone surprise, I mean, that won't change anything because it's very close to the Mecha Bay. And surely Yousif can actually take down one collector, but it doesn't really matter because after all, Bashley is already getting another refinery as well. I mean, at this point, I think he would even try to expand over here. But good for the Yousif. He is actually getting his 3rd refinery, and maybe he will get his 4th. On the meantime, some hammer tank and the composite army is being built, but it's a bit humiliating. Bashley, I think he believes this defender reacts can easily prevent and halt Yousif on his tracks. We will see if Bashley's calculations actually work. So hammer tanks are already 2. We've seen conscripts and flak troopers together. I mean, even though we may have some flak troopers, but I mean, they are not very intimidating as much as a bullfrog against the VXs. Because when you see, for example, when you are Empire and when you have some VXs, and if you see a bullfrog, you just go run away. That's very simple. Because bullfrogs can actually fire while they are not facing to the same direction. This makes it a bit difficult for the chopper VXs. This is another cause, for example, for the IFBs as well. But for example, striker VXs cannot attack while walking. I mean, while they're moving, and that's a terrible. I mean, that's a terrible negative consequence for the Empire anti-air. I mean, land-to-air anti-air defense. We will see. I mean, at this point, I don't think Yousif has some chances. I mean, at this point, Bashley should throw the game in an unbelievable level. So I think we will just see what will Yousif do to entertain Bashley at this point. I wonder, here's the thing. So I checked about this sudden, also this Imperial Warrior takes slashing 4 conscripts. I've checked about this Chrono Clash thing, and from the looks of it, some guys who happen to open a company, and their name is Chronosphere. I mean, you can't make this up. And interestingly enough, they also like the Command and Conquer games. Not specifically Red Alert series. This can be even the earliest, like the first installment of the game, a Command and Conquer. Not even the Tiberium Wars or stuff. Anyway, so this is why the whopping, if I remember correctly, it's either 600 or 700 prize pool. And this is nice for the community to have they share this prize with the first, second, and third place. I mean, if you ask me, just give all of the prize money to the first, and we will see some insane levels of play coming from our, for example, especially expert players. Also, this Southern Transport is being cheeky at this point with it being camouflaged as a hammer tank. But here's a question. I wonder if this is going to continue for the other series as well, because let's speak about it. Red Alert 2, one of the most, let's say, neglected or overlooked game in the current years. I mean, surely it was something incredible back around 2000s, but right now the game is actually being, let's say, 20 years old. Almost. And also, Yousif is now doing some big plays, infecting this thing. He says, yeah, I may not be very knowledgeable about the game, but I'm not that dumb, he says, and infects his Southern Transport. Which is nice for Yousif. Anyway, for Red Alert 2, I wonder if there will be a tournament. Or if there is a tournament, I didn't really check it out. But if so, I mean, I don't know you people, but I do like Red Alert 2. It's a fantastic game. But I can't really say the same about the multiplayer component of the game. Because, if I remember correctly, the most of the game should be like, I mean, either when you pick Soviets, you make lots of Rhino tanks. And if you're allies, you will try to hold off the Rhino tanks and try to go tech up and get some Prism and Mirage tanks. And if your Soviets can't defeat your enemy, then you just spam lots of apocalypse as you can. I really don't like that one. I mean, for example, the naval combat is like a placeholder combat. I mean, there is aircraft carriers and destroyers, but the Soviet naval units are just anti-naval units. They don't even do... Yeah, there are dreadnoughts, but come on, let's be honest in here. I mean, 2 Patriot missiles actually can easily handle a dreadnought. On Yuri's Revenge, we have Guardian GIs, and I guess they can also handle as well. Also, good thing for the Yousif is now he has access to airfield and making some Tomb Blades, but I mean, you need more than some flak troopers to defend that. And lots of infantry. Unfortunately, Yousif goes for the satellite drop, not Desert to Delta airstrike. And tank busters are now dealing some free damage to these hammer tanks. No conscripts or bears to protect it. Anyway, so the Red Alert 2 multiplayer tournament or component, whatever you want to call, I don't think it will be this much of fashionable. When Redder 2 was released. I don't know why, but people were actually so pissed off about the game, and the game was actually fine. I really liked the Redder 3, and I still do, but people were upset about something. Because the best thing about the RTS player base is that we have very incredible diverse taste about this game. Like some people want, for example, basic expansions as scrolling, others like moving FCV back and forth. Some like fantasy, some like technology, some like medieval. Doesn't really matter. Some like units with skills, some like not. There are some people even enjoy strategy games that where you make armies of blobs. I don't know if you know what a blob is. Like, for example, you just get to make lots of same amount of units and gather a big blob of units, and then you clash with your opponent. I really have. I mean, I can't find myself thinking that is entertaining or challenging or exciting, but there are some people who actually like that, and that is something. I mean, speaking volumes about this player base. Like, there are so many people like so many things. For example, I personally enjoyed Dark Colony a lot. Also, Yousif is now going for a suicide march or something. I mean, Yousif is now. Is he trolling or? I mean, I wonder what are they speaking anything in the free chat, all chat. Like, okay, you won. I will just make conscripts, so let's have fun. And probably Bashley will say like, okay, whatever else for the win. And now so many conscripts are actually combating. I mean, going on a fray against the tank busters. And Bashley now decides to intervene the Mecha Tengus. All of them have landed and now quickly taking down all of these poor conscripts. Like, they even have some Molotov cocktails, and none of these conscripts are actually in attack move, but they're on a Q move, so they just go and die. Yeah, pretty much. I think at this point, Bashley should be like 40k. Okay, 25k. Anyway, so that's something. For example, okay, let's speak about more contemporary example. For example, generals. Generals have still some solid withstanding game player base. So maybe, hopefully, we will see some tournaments about like this, something like this happening for the Red 3 as well, because we need a serious shock of surge for the RTS player base. I mean, we are diminishing, guys, by the way. I mean, our numbers are shrinking down, and yes, honestly speaking, it's not our fault because there are so many video games out there, but we all have 24 hours in a day. Considering that we get to work for, let's say, 8 to 10 hours, and then attending some personal matters like eating, showering, cleaning your house, etc. And then how many hours we have left for the video game. And then let's say if we are lucky enough, we get 1 or 2 hours in a day. And after this, there will be so many video games out there to play. And you will ask yourself, okay, I mean, what about playing my favorite strategy game? Nah, I can play that later. I will play this newly released, whatever else it is, the game for my entertainment. Also, Bashley is now strictly about going for the Defender VXs, but he is not going for a super weapon or anything. So, I mean, at this point, again, I mean, there's no way Yousif can win this. I think they are playing a different kind of a game between each other. But anyway, so maybe hopefully we will see a game like a tournament like this in other games as well, and seeing some nice surge. I mean, come to think of it, Riddler 1 got a remastered treatment, and it's not that bad. I actually liked it. But here's the problem. For example, myself, I really don't find Riddler 1's multiplayer component that's enjoyable as well, compared with, for example, Riddler 3. There are so many units out there, but I mean, how strategic they are. Riddler 1, if you ask me, just making lots of tanks and roll around and try to take down the buildings as much as you can possible. Surely you can make some infantry, that is something, but the formula of the old RTS or let's say Command and Conquer games, where making more production buildings, speeding up the production, is actually not a good formula for today's games. I mean, each individual production facility, this can be barracks, airfield, or war factory, doesn't really matter. Okay, Yousif is trying to do something, so at least he has an attempt. These bullfrogs are now verge of being dead, and these conscripts are dying. Anyway, what was I saying? Yes, the formula is not really working these days. I mean, when you play a strategy game, you should able to make as much as credits as possible. This can be like, for example, harvesting or collecting, making an economy, but also spending is something else. So with production being sped up, will not really help you to make a different army. For example, in Red Alert 3, what? Okay, this is not a sudden transport, by the way. In Red Alert 3, for example, what you get, think about the Imperial. Imperial will usually lose air superiority. I mean, they gain an air superiority on the early game, but they lose afterwards. The main reason is very simple. Because over one production building, you have to arrange a land army, an air army, and land to air army, or let's say air to land army. For example, on the other hand, for example, in Soviets, you can, for example, make a very solid land to air unit and also land to land unit. Or airfield, let's say you have the best air to land unit as well, they're twin blades. Also, for example, allies have their own components for the units as well. I mean, this is how it takes to bring a good formula, a strategy formula for your game, so people can actually experiment on different build orders, different strategies, maybe rushes, or something else. But in Red Alert 1 or Red Alert 2, what we get to see Rhino tanks, Rizzy tanks, heavy tanks, light or medium tanks, and that will be all. Surely there are some yaks and MiGs in the Red Alert 1, but I mean, how practical they are to use. I mean, think about it. There are Vindicators in this game, and how valuable they are in this game. But in Red Alert 3, I mean, we have yaks and they just do some stupid autocannon damage. Doesn't really matter for me, or matter for anyone else because no one else is using. There are choppers, but I mean, they just fire 5 rounds and then go backward reload. How feasible is that? Or why would you make that instead of, for example, not making one extra tank? And surely there are some infantry, but I mean, you don't have tank passes. Like, you don't have, once again, for example, flak troopers, javelins. Even Doom 2000 had those. Like, there were some troopers, and yeah, troopers were OP. But you had actually option, and you can always get a siege tank and destroy all of them. But generals were not like that. In generals, there was some unit composition. For example, you may ask like, oh, but there is a unit composition in Red Alert 2. For example, think about the Soviet barracks. Yeah, Soviet barracks. So many units that able to kill themselves. Like Crazy Ivan, Terrorist, anything else. You had Demo Truck. What they do, they do the same thing, by the way. Making Iron Curtain on 4 demolition trucks. Oh, this is the strategy you call. Well, that's something then you say. But then again, for example, think about the Allied counterparts. It's not that bad. Like you had Navy SEAL, and then you had Tanya doesn't really. I don't want to add Tanya into the consideration because that's a commando unit. I mean, that's not infantry. You had GI, you had GIs, and then, for example, Chrono Legionnaire, Rocketeers. Some unit variation were out there. But what did Soviets have? Yeah, conscripts, flak troopers. Oh wait, Bashley. Ooh, some explosion out there, by the way. But I mean, Bashley at this point doesn't really care. I think he's swimming in the cash right now. Yep, Uncle Scrooge, 70k already. Anyway, the Soviets infantry, what did they have? Tesla troopers? Yeah, they were super cool. But we all, for example, played that mission where we actually electrocute the Eiffel Tower and then kill everything on the map. Yeah, that's fine, but I'm speaking about the multiplayer here, by the way. So, flak troopers, conscripts, and then Tesla troopers, and that will be all. Yeah, maybe Desolator. Yeah, that's something, but that will be all once again. Yeah, there were Yuri, but I mean, Yuri was not very difficult to handle against, especially if you're playing allies. You usually spam some robot tanks and then attack from all angles in the game and try your very best. Also, Bashley really wants to get this MCV at one point or another, putting engineers on different directions. Also, these conscripts are actually throwing molotovs on the real deal tank busters, and since they are stacked on each other, they're taking so many damage. Right, tank busters are dealt with, and the last thing is Yousif's MCV, and that's sold off, and first ground goes to Bashley. The other thing is, I couldn't find. I mean, this is a best of three. It's supposed to be best of three, but there's no further games. So I think the Yousif doesn't really make it to the next phase of the game. Probably we will see him if he attends on the losers bracket game. But congratulations for the Bashley. So GG for him.